gonna say it. I'm gonna say the gamer word. Gnomes.
Ah, how dare you. And we're back with more tabletop tales from the Tabletopchi Bros. And
That
today,
is. I was gonna say that is what we are. Yes.
yes, and today we're going to be talking about the time where the Snek became the GM in the grim dark, well, grim derp future of Shadowrun.
Yeah, I was about to say. I don't think we ever really went full grimdark. It got really wacky at places, but not really.
For people who may not be familiar, Shadowrun is a near future setting where cyberpunk meets high fantasy. And if you ever said, "Gosh, I sure do love D&D, but I wish that I could have, a shotgun or a bazooka," well, congratulations, you should play Shadowrun because
Or man, I sure do wish that. I sure do wish that cyberpunk, had elf racism. Then, or everyone hates gnomes. Yeah, then, well, Shadowrun is pretty awesome. Also, it is 80s as heck.
it is. Shadowrun, for those who may not know, Shadowrun and Cyberpunk have actually had a friendly rivalry since the two franchises debuted. And the most recent edition of Shadowrun came out just a year and a half, 2 years ago, with Shadowrun Sixth World, which I think is a great place for anyone who is curious about the game to get on board, because it fixes so many problems Fifth Edition had.
Yeah, we started with 4th edition, actually, I want to say.
Yeah,
Then
we were
we went
tail
over to
end
5th.
fourth.
And yeah, as someone who really really got into Exalted, I can dig 5th edition. It is really crunchy. It is like trail mix crunchy, but I can admit that that might not be to everyone's taste. But I feel like fifth or not fifth. What am I saying? Sixth is a good streamlining.
It
It's
is. Fifth had some bog from three and four still hanging around, and sixth was like, okay, we're going to like trim the ever loving crap out of this and make it very sleek. In fact, the Shadowrun Sixth World book is small as game manuals go.
Yeah, I actually have it right
It's
here,
a
right next to me.
beautiful, wonderful book. So if you
Yeah.
guys are curious about this setting, it's really great. And I'm not going to get too into the history because the people who wrote Shadowrun are serious history heads, and it goes into a lot of speculative politicking.
You want to know what's funny though? Something that you kind of postulated. The people who did old Shadowrun were actually also the guys who did old BattleTech. It
Yep.
was the same company.
Yep, back when they were
So you,
FASA.
yeah, you were like, oh man, this sounds a lot like Shadowrun. I'm like, because it was the same writers, dude.
Same guys, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of common blood. So if you guys have enjoyed those Snek tries, you would be very interested. Especially, I think a great gateway drug is Shadowrun Returns, which I did a full review of, and its immediate sequel, Dragonfall. And maybe I'll do Hong Kong someday, but it's like it's the same but more. Like, what more do you need? It's Shadowrun. So to give some background information, this game, again, I was GM, and my wonderful players were obviously Dietaku, and we also had Clockwork and the Lona Ranger, and Cog for a short time. That's because his work schedule was so chaotic.
Hmm.
And our runners were operating out of the Free City of Seattle, which is actually part of the UCAS, United Canadian American States, because cyberpunk is weird. And we began the game January 15th of 2080 to set the stage in the event anyone's curious about the minutia. And we decided I'm the type of GM who will I'll read a whole bunch of different campaign ideas, and then I'll be like, Yes, okay, that's interesting. Now I'm going to take a cleaver and chop it into a million pieces and Frankenstein the story together. So that way, even if my runners have read the story, I can still throw things at them they're not expecting.
And then
Especially,
we go, this is all very interesting, and then we immediately ignore that and then go,
and do their own
gosh,
thing.
this one shopkeeper is like, I'm old and I need money because the Yakuza is like, oh my god, we love you.
We
We'll
are
do
going to take
runs for
care of
you.
you. Yeah, yeah. The thing about Shadowrunners is it really shows just how bizarre and unevenly distributed altruism truly is. So, let's start with player introductions. Dietaku, your character was Ingrid, the Big
Yes,
Iron.
yes.
Tell us about her.
She was a German immigrant, or yeah, she was a first generation German immigrant. Her parents were escaping the flux state, and she and her twin sister were brought over to Seattle when they were very little. She therefore became very, very, very much enamored with cowboy culture because she wanted to ingratiate herself into, Americana. And so she joined up with Ares. Had to think what with Ares's police force,
Yep.
but quickly became disillusioned and kind of became a loose cannon. She was supposed to be basically female, uh, Dirty Harry, like, I'm too tired of, gangers. I'm a loose cannon. My chief keeps telling me to stop killing people. Justice must be served. She did not be that, but she was a fun character. She also had the amusing penchant because she was a street samurai that she had a crap load of guns. She really, really, really took to the American stereotype of Americans are so enamored with their firearms. They're like, yes. First
Yes.
off, yes, we are. Secondly, so she had like I want to say 6 or 7 uh, guns, and they all had nicknames that were all Ronnie James Dio bands because I am a goofball and I, make a habit of doing things like that.
Seems legit.
Her favorite, I believe, was Elf, which was a Predator 5, I want to say.
Yep. So
But I
Predator 5 that
remember,
mysteriously mutated into a Predator 6 when we changed systems.
yes, and I also remember that she had the Ares machine gun, and I did not realize that it actually came standard with a grenade launcher, because I didn't use a grenade launcher initially, but holy crap, I did not realize how good that weapon was because I made a point of having the wired senses so I can, uh, link up my eyes where I'm looking and where I'm shooting. And the fact that like pretty much every single Ares weapon comes with the smart link, just standard. I don't have to, you know. I see it's like, oh, smart link add-on, and like all my guns come with smart link. I also gave her the she was a bioroid, so I gave her the adrenal endocrine boost system, I believe, which basically gives you a massive overhaul to your spine and your endocrine system so that you can react much quicker. And I did not realize how busted this was because I basically I spent half my money on this system. And I'm like, but then I realized what it did in terms of the fact that it basically gave me 2 times the initiative that anyone else would have. And so everyone else would be like, initiative 10. I'd be like, I have 25.
Me first, me first, me first, me first.
Yeah, and this is the, so there was this petite little blonde elf with a grenade launcher. That's usually how these battles started. And she was a lot of fun. And as I say, she really, I started in Grand Dietaku fashion. I, this is what I wanted to play. This is what I actually played. And it's like, I wanted her to be Dirty Harry. She basically was the biggest white hat
Yeah,
softie.
she really was. She was probably the softest touch in the party.
And I don't know. I had a lot of fun with her, even though she
Oh,
was not
she
what
was
I,
Knight Errant. I'm sorry. I was looking at my
yeah.
notes. So yeah, she was actually under Knight Errant, which is not Ares. I believe that's
Oh yeah, they're their own thing.
yeah. They spun off
Yeah,
into their own company, and but no, Ingrid was a wonderful character. She ended up kind of becoming the team mom, like without even meaning to.
yeah.
But then we had our infiltrator, a fella named Troppo, who was the Lone Ranger's character, and he was an Australian who went to Seattle after military discharge due to medical discharge. He lost several fingers during the Second Emu War, where a legion of self-aware, awakened emus decided to wreak revenge on the Australian people for the offenses of the First Emu War.
Yeah, I mean, didn't you and he like set up a here's what was going on in Australia because like we you basically looked at the background for Australia and it's like
Yeah, there's like no information on what's happening down there right now. As
yeah.
of Shadowrun's continuity, like the outback is pretty much ravaged by magic storms, but they don't. That's all they tell us. It's like, and oh, there was sometime in the 2050s or the 2060s, there was this prison dedicated to containing the spider spirit, the grandmother spider spirit. And something happened that caused a small army of Shadowrunners to storm the prison and free her. That's literally all we know. Australia is just kind of in limbo otherwise. In fact,
Oh,
we came up with like Australia's own great dragon, which has not been discussed. We came up with this whole thing about like the story and the people of Australia and how the Australian government was fractured in similar fashion to America and Europe. We've done more to develop Australia in Shadowrun than Shadowrun
yeah, I was about to
has.
say, wasn't there an entire city like they had, like kind of what they did with the Great Lepus Wall, where they had like an awakened government of drop bears, and so they actually had to build a giant wall to prevent them
Yeah, to
from,
keep them from storming any further south.
yeah.
It got pretty crazy. I need to go back to my logs and see what he and I brainstormed. But we came up with a lot of stuff because like you guys were actually going to go there later on, but we didn't get the chance to. So we had a whole bunch of stuff there, and I had this whole plot line set up there where you guys were going to be going into a small scale war for a dragon egg at a later date, but never got to that. Troppo was our infiltrator. He was a physical adept, and he was basically our ninja slayer. He was crazy, and I actually found that if your infiltrator is really, really good, it's going to be hard to counter them. So,
Oh,
just
there are ways to counter them. You
there
just
are.
you didn't use spirits and you didn't use a lot of because like we later learned firsthand high level drone technology, the automated drone weapons are really, really strong.
Yeah, they are. Like I was trying to softball it because like this is we were learning the system for the first time together, and I knew just like barely more than anyone else did, and that wasn't even saying much. But as we were learning this process, yeah, mistakes were made. So we'll highlight that as we go. Troppo is actually still active. He has been the Lone Ranger's go-to character, and honestly, we all kind of love him, so we're very okay with that.
He's killing people and seducing older ladies to this day.
Yes, and he shows no sign of slowing down. And lastly, we have Clockwork's character, Clockwork, because
Creativity is hard, you guys.
Clockwork
Don't even.
was our decker. And the thing with him, and the thing that always routinely shocked me was that Clockwork always ended up blowing hot and cold. because he was either 100% in the game and was like, guys, I have a plan. I'm going to do this crazy last minute, 11th hour dodge, and everything just works out, and because he's just that good. And then other times he was thwarted by an OSHA compliant stairwell.
Yep, it's this game. I think we've talked about this game.
Yeah, that we have. It was one of the Let's Plays, I think, and we talked about that. This is the game where that happened. And so, as the GM, a lot of the mistakes made in the game fall on me, and I'll own that. It was a big learning experience, and we'll get into the pros and cons of what I did as we go. It turns out there actually is a canon runner whose handle actually is Clockwork, and I plan to have him show up just to troll him at some point. I don't think I ever did. I also created a rival for him, but then he immediately retired the character as soon as I was going to introduce her, so a little bit of a bummer. We start with the classic Shadowrun, the Stuffer Shack run. For those who don't know, Stuffer Shack is like what would happen if you crossed 7-Eleven and a McDonald's. And
about that classy, too.
Yeah, about that classy. Thereabouts. So Ingrid goes into the Stuffer Shack and gets herself some snacks and other miscellaneous adult-oriented items so that she doesn't look lame, according to Dietaku. And the boy at the counter is just like this... Dave the intern from Sonic Boom? That's basically how I was writing this kid. He just did not care in the slightest.
I'm on my break.
And Troppo notices some shifty activity from this gang of elves in yellow cloaks just outside the store. So he starts Spider-Manning and going after them. And I introduced they were part of a small elven independence movement, a gang called the Daggerbacks. And they were attempting to expand the Empire Tir Tangire, but they were just really, really terrible at it, and they didn't really have the resources or consistent organization to meaningfully move that objective forward. And as I recall, actually, you tried to be nice. I believe you actually asked them to stand down politely, and then you started opening fire. And you remember how we mentioned how the new version of Exalted can be a little bit sluggish in combat? Shadowrun doesn't have that problem.
Nope.
You have two health tracks. You have your physical health track and your mental health track. And that's it. And by the way, it's measured in pips, and I think the highest you can possibly have on either is 20, and I think 25 if you have certain modifications. That's it.
Yeah, I was pretty beefy, and I had 15.
Yeah. And we were kind of learning how the damage calculations were done as we went, so Ingrid's gun goes bang, 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 and the elves just kind of hit the floor. There was just... Oh, it was brutal. And
the funny thing was, it was great, okay, so what's your initiative? 23? Okay, alright, so you get to act again, and they still haven't acted, right? Bang, bang, bang. I think I got 2 shots off before they actually even did, and basically they were going, oh crap, and they were running to...
Yes. They started diving behind shelves because they just literally could not keep pace. And the little intern guy hiding behind the counter is like, oh, you shoot it, you bought it. And Ingrid's like, not now, little wormy boy.
I'm on my break.
And the leader of the elves, I believe, tried to make a run for it, and he was caught by a troll who was an officer of the law. A fella by the name of Oscar. It was a former coworker of Ingrid's who always seemed to just happen to be in the neighborhood when these shenanigans got underway. And
Oscar is a good boy.
He is. Oscar was a Hispanic troll. Mm-hmm. And I'm not calling him a troll as in an occupation. He was physically a troll. That's one of his metatype.
Yeah.
Welcome to Shadowrun.
Welcome. Yeah, in Shadowrun, trolls and orcs and dwarves are real. And before anybody is like, orcs are the black people, it's
no,
actually
they're not.
they're orcs of all different all different races,
Yeah, you
actually.
could be a white orc, you could be a Hispanic orc, you could be a Japanese orc. You get all sorts of weird stuff. And then you get really weird situations where, okay, I'm going to try to explain this as succinctly as I can. Magic in the world of Shadowrun ebbs and flows. It moves like the tide. And it comes and goes in, I want to say, 20,000 year intervals. So every 20,000 years, magic will either go away or come back. And in the Sixth World, which I believe began officially in 2010, magic comes back. And suddenly, elves, dwarves, orcs, and trolls are being born into the humans' population. But magic has this thing about it where your cultural sensibility shapes the nature of the magic. Also, in Shadowrun, all religions are real and correct. All of them. And so you get
Yep.
situations where a Japanese troll can be born as an oni and stuff like that. And you'll have like weird pseudo dwarves born in Ireland who are themed on leprechauns and stuff like that. It's just Shadowrun is weird and doesn't care about anything. So Oscar was a like a 7.5 foot tall, huge man with horns and dermal deposits that gave him natural armor, but he was actually this really nice, friendly goober who just wanted to help people.
Yeah, he was raised by his abuela.
Yep.
I'm going to be, I'm a gringo, so my pronunciation is poor. But yeah, he was a good boy. He was raised by his grandma. He loved his family. He went to school. He was trying to make the world a better place.
Yep.
He was a good guy. He was a good guy.
Yep. He
I
always genuinely.
I've taken advantage of him.
You all took advantage of him. He was too nice, but like that actually kind of became like his charm point. Was like he genuinely wanted to help people. He didn't like if he didn't have to throw someone in the slammer, he wouldn't. Because he's like, oh, that's not going to help them. That's going to make things worse for them. That's going to ruin their lives. It's better to help people more proactively. So Oscar was like, every time they asked what Oscar was up to, he was like volunteering at soup kitchens and food pantries and helping out at his church. And he was just the nicest guy. But when they actually got to see him in combat, what I didn't tell them was that he had some of the highest physical stats a troll could have, which, by the way, are the highest a runner can have. He could punch through solid steel, and it really didn't slow him down any.
Yeah, I was about to say, he went toe-to-toe with a mil-spec combat drone.
Yep.
So,
and ripped it apart with his bare hands.
Yeah.
It's the nice ones you have to watch out for.
Yeah.
So Oscar took over from there and was just kind of like, yeah, I'll write up the report. You guys get out of here. And Troppo ended up dealing with their Decker from the outside and ended up finding a coupon for Sushi Rainbow, which has had its name change constantly because I always forget if I named it Sushi Rainbow or Rainbow Sushi. And the coupon advertised now with real fish. Okay, this is a qualm that I have with cyberpunk as a genre. The Sixth World began in 2010. Metatype started manifesting in 2012. Awakened Animals happened by 2020. Here's the thing. It's been 60 years since then. The world would not still be operating on the soy-based economy found in most cyberpunk settings. A lot of this would have been fixed in 60 years' time.
Just you have
saying.
to understand that a lot of it is due to the fact that in the original FASA works, it's heavily based off of the presumption that it's still in the 2050s.
Yeah, still fairly early on after the initial disasters happened, which ruined the world economy. And that made sense. But it's been 60 years. It's 2080 now. Yeah. In the Sixth World, I believe the book starts in the year 2079 with the East Coast blackout.
Yeah.
And so it's like, no.
Uncle's Dad's been dead for 20 years, guys.
Pour a drink out for Uncle Jean. The best president we never had.
he might be a fire-breathing dragon, but hey, he's honest about it.
He was, and that was to his credit. The world is poorer for his loss. So the team ends up, for varying reasons, being sent to Sushi Rainbow, which was a mom-and-pop shop established by some Japanese immigrants, Yoshi and Rinko Watanabe, and their Gyaru daughter, Honoka. You see, when I first started working on this setting, it was going to be such that I was going to be a player, not the GM. So Honoka was actually the character that I built. Then, as we decided we were finalizing who was player, who was GM, and how we were going to handle it, I became the GM, so Honoka became NPC. So I designed Yoshi and Rinko to fill different niches in a Shadowrunning party in the event they didn't have them. So if they needed a infiltrator, they were going to get Yoshi. If they needed a decker or a technomancer, Honoka would help them, and Rinko was a street Sammy. So I was basically just kind of fleshing out a roster of free help, because as I learned in my Shadowrun Returns playthrough, ain't nothing gonna burn through your new yen like having to hire other runners.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's more runners and augs are really where it gets you.
Yeah, that you will burn through so much money if you try to do it like that. And I have a note here. Due to an amusing typo, a new team of runners was born as a side story, featuring Friend Octopus, Radical Larry, Sexy Penguin, and Disco Panda. And apparently, no matter what was happening, Disco Panda and company were always in the middle of some life or death struggle that somehow tangentially related to whatever our team was doing at any given time. I had actually forgotten about those guys.
Didn't they actually encounter actual, real, honest to God movie Knuckles like 5 years before movie Knuckles actually was a thing?
Okay, this requires some explanation, doesn't it? Fairly early on, we end up befriending. Actually, this is like the next thing on my notes. We ended up meeting an NPC shaman named Fallen Snow. She was an Amerindian shaman who had a very special master spirit, one that I custom made for her. And I started using the shark totem from the core book as his basis. So now, since you're on YouTube anyway, go ahead and go up to that search bar and look for Lumpy Touch Movie Sonic. You're welcome. That was basically the spirit I gave her. And I joked that he was the Wendigo spirit. And eventually, I mentioned offhandedly his full title would be Wendigo of the North. And so we began speculating, wait, does that mean there's other Wendigos? And yes, yes, it turns out there were. And so Wendigo ended up playing movie Sonic in the alternate universe where they didn't fix the CG and Sonic still looked really creepy, instead of the movie that we actually got.
Yeah, we kind of ate those words.
We did. We really did.
But for the purposes of our game, we basically were running off the assumption that the Sonic movie was going to be absolutely, like, Uwe Boll tier awful, but somehow they made, like, 6 of them, and it got really increasingly ridiculous, to the point that they stopped making the movies because, like, basically they blew up a chunk of Montana or something.
Yeah, due to a stunt went wrong, and the stunt somehow interfered with one of Disco Panda's mission, and iridium discs were dropped in the middle of Montana, and now half the state is basically just gone.
But because of that, real honest-to-God movie Knuckles, the giant, echidna spirit, is still just in the middle of the desert going, I miss my friends.
They'll be back any minute once they realize that I'm not with them. Yeah. Any minute now. And according to our canon, he's still standing there to this day. Just like, yep, any minute now.
Yep.
Fallen Snow ends up coming to us with intention of going after this gang This was... I was having a little bit too much fun with this one. I created a gang of mostly geriatric mages called the Silver Knives. And... oh man, I learned so much about being a Shadowrun GM because the first leg of the mission was going to be this alleyway full of these mages ready to blow these guys into Kingdom Come. Troppo goes, I'm going to go over them. And I'm like, okay. And so he does. And then he just starts knifing dudes left and right.
They didn't have any spirits or anything, unfortunately. That was one of the main problems.
Yeah, there were mostly hermetic mages, so they didn't have spirits watching their six. So I learned quickly why so many Shadowruns are laced with traps, spirits, magical incantations, and curses. I understand that a bit better now. Because Troppo. And every time, this is a long-running thing, every time I try to beat Troppo, Troppo one-ups me. And this is a repeated theme you'll see throughout the story.
Yeah, I was about to say, Troppo is like, basically is Australian Batman. We just didn't know it yet.
Yeah, he's basically Batman, Spider-Man fusion from Australia. Yeah, and you can't stop this guy, no matter how hard you try. Especially if you're an older, mature lady. So, man. Along the way, I give Clockwork a rival in the form of the Decker known as the Elite Haxor, who was an experienced and well-seasoned hacker who has actually been learning about computers since prior to the Great Crash. So, while they're battling, Fallen Snow is like, okay,
is that Sora? Or was that somebody else?
No, that was before he actually entered the picture. He was, we never got his actual name because you never actually found him face to face, but when he was finally defeated, he passed on the title of the Elite Haxor to Clockwork on his deathbed. He was basically the nerd equivalent of the sniper battle from Metal Gear Solid 3. Had you waited a few weeks, maybe he just would have kicked the bucket for you.
Hello.
And
all the puppies are with me now.
Oh, nice. Yep. Snow decides, okay, we need to balance these numbers a bit. So she summons Wendigo. And much like the lumpy touch animations of movie Sonic, I give him this really exaggerated, almost cartoonish way of expressing himself. And he's hey, guys. He's real talkative, real, like, jovial. Like, he liked hanging out with the party, even though he was this unhinged, deranged psychopath.
You gotta finish eating that geezer?
No, you can have it.
Don't mind if I do.
But that's just how he was. And so then I bring in a boss fight. And I'm like, okay, this one's going to be good. This one's going to challenge even the likes of of this particular this runner team. So I bring in Wrecking Ball, his handle, and he is this big, roided up orc. Dude is a brick wall. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give them a chance to try to talk their way out of it. So Wrecking Ball comes in and actually opens up dialogue with them and starts talking with them. And Troppo even kind of bants with him for a bit. And then Ingrid goes, he gets some granddad, as the quote I have written down. And Wrecking Ball dodges it. And she's just kind of like, oh no. Because finally they were dealing with someone who actually had physical stats that were slightly higher than balsa wood and rice paper. But ultimately, I was very impressed with how the team came together. This battle showed how well the team was going to click together. Because I gave him this quirky little thing about his cybernetic arm. Because it was around this point that Ingrid discovered her love of her grenade launcher. So I said, okay, Ingrid, I can play that game. So she fires the grenade, and it causes an automatic reflex in the arm that grabs the grenade and throws it straight back.
It was at that point Ingrid knew she f***ed up.
And so she basically just looks on in horror as it just slings straight back. And I think you guys barely managed to get out of the way. Let me scroll down a little through the notes here.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think I managed to duck for cover because I had enough initiative that I could do a full dodge.
Yeah, you guys actually managed to dodge it, even though it was very narrow because the reflex wasn't a full distinguished roll.
Yeah, this is kind of just kind of a microcosm of Ingrid's, experience with the thing. She proceeds to just unload on an enemy, proceeds to constantly cry for help, and then somehow wins. And then she's like, "Yeah, I didn't need anybody else." And it's like, "Yeah, because I was the only one fighting."
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting thing when that happens when you're the street Sammy and your infiltrator just disappears and your decker is hiding in the very, very back row.
You gonna do something, Decker? No.
No, I'm good back here. You guys got this.
You're gonna burn their cybernetics. You're gonna I don't know.
Well, that's part of why I kept an NPC with you guys at all times, or really, I guess that would be just a GM PC, so that you guys would have some kind of support, because Wendigo helped a bit during that fight, even though the thing that scared the runners was when Wrecking Ball had such high physical stats that he grabbed Wendigo by the throat and threw him across the room, and everyone was just like, oh no.
Yeah.
No, another good quote. Fallen Snow. I have literally watched men die, and nothing about that scares me like Miss Honoka's driving. Yes, no one in the party could drive, so I had to let them bum rides in her van, and Honoka just drove like a mad woman and just did not care what damage she caused. So that was
worry, guys. I watched Initial D.
I'm pretty sure I've watched all the Fast and Furious movies. I'm pretty sure I got this on lock.
Oh no.
Knuckles.
Driving is about
no.
family, right? Oh, no.